Hey guys, Kyle the Death Note of Anime here, bringing you my review for Attack on Titan Season 3, Episode 3. And to sorry about the glare, guys. It's just actually, believe it or not, that's me fixing it. I'm not sure. I'm not. It's just really bright out today. But anyway, let's get into the review. And to start off with, I know there are going to be a lot of people out there who are just going to be just hating on this episode for having very little plot development and when focusing on its story and Erwin's backstories. But in a way, I feel it's what made this episode a little unique in the sense where those backstories were the plot development, and in order to directly counter basically the whole thing of this being filler, the whole argument of this being filler, I already told you guys time and time again. This I already told you guys within these first two episodes that this arc is more heavy on the world building than the fighting. Like the fighting in this arc is only a supplementary aspect. Hell, even the stuff with that wasn't backstory oriented still pretty much had a lot of development to it. It just came in smaller chunks, and you need to you need to completely and 100% pay attention because it when you look at the honestly this arc as a whole. I said it again. Isayama said it himself that this arc is not. Isayama said it himself that it was around the time. It was around the time that he was doing this arc that he completely underestimated the popularity of his own series and said, "Oh, I need to continue this. It's that popular. Okay, where am I supposed to go with this?" And and knowing that going and no, and it definitely does show in the manga, but I will say this much: even knowing that, it is actually kind of impressive how, to me, the even despite whatever problems you have with it, the anime is kind of still doing is kind of still doing basically the manga justice while also fixing a few definitely a lot more of its problems for sure. Like I don't know if Isayama is working closely with the studio on this one, but it is showing that a lot of this content is going a lot at a bit more of a faster pace than the manga was. So yeah, I guess just take that for what it is, guys. Trust me, just remember, no matter what problems you have, it definitely could be going at a much slower pace than this. Trust me on that one. Um, and going back to the backstories, I do like how both of these backstories portray two very specific viewpoints of the government's corruption and just to what the great degree they want to keep their public image, especially when you look at Historia's past with her mother, because she was completely oblivious to her situation. She just thought she was going to be sent to a farm in order to live out a happy life with her mother. But it was just another means of hiding the fact that Historia was from, Historia was a complete was well, definitely having well, definitely having the blood of the race family running through her veins. There's still the fact that she was an illegitimate daughter of Rod Race, so it didn't help. So she was just sent there in order to be in order to be in order to be out of the way and in order to be out of the way and pretty much so that she out of the face of the public. Which honestly makes me shudder if the whole thing of being on the farm was pretty much even Rod's idea and not necessarily the government's, because I get the feeling if the government had the way I think they would probably kill her. I think they would have probably killed her both Historia and her mother on the spot after learning of that. Like it was only like it was only after that whole incident with basically Kenny and the first Interior Squad that Historia's mother ended up getting killed, and it's even funny. It's even more and the even more tragic thing about the death of Historia's mother too, is that even after learning, even after seeing her mother get killed, she pretty much still had no idea as to why it happened. She pretty much just thought her mother might have committed a crime or something like that, a small petty crime or something. But and it's funny how like only after this was of course her reflecting on her life, so really fun. It's really like tragic to think that only after reflecting on these events does she realize that what it basically all means now. It's kind of yeah, it's a real insane and whirlwind of events that basically led her to this moment. And what's funny, and again, this episode was definitely the backstories were definitely a lot more plot driven than you think. And Historia's past was only one side to basically this plot driven puzzle piece because was where we definitely get Erwin's backstory in this episode as well. And with Erwin's backstory, which is where with Erwin's backstory, we basically see in an almost ironic way, if you think about it, it is in an almost ironic way with Story's backstory. It was basically all about the government pretty much covering up Story's identity, but in Erwin's backstory, we pretty much see and leaving no short. But in Erwin's backstory, we basically see how in the government's attempts to in order to censor history and to protect themselves and to just kind of and to rework history into their image to make it better in order to hide history or whatnot. It's funny how in all their attempts to do so, they ended up leaving behind complete inaccuracies of history itself. Like Erwin's father said it himself. Like he basically saw inaccuracies and complete falsehoods that the government had created that no one even bothered to look at. But Erwin himself, unlike his story, who's completely blind, he basically saw. He basically was inquisitive enough in order to see all that there were inaccuracies happening in general. So, yeah, it's very much two sides of the same. It's very much two sides. Like one person, Historia, was definitely completely oblivious to the government's corruption, whereas with Erwin, he wasn't. He didn't know of the level of the government corruption that was going on, but he definitely knew it probably was out there. So he was inquisitive enough to know that something wasn't right for sure. And I'm not gonna lie, with Erwin's backstory, with the whole thing with Erwin's backstory. I like how this also opens up the possibility of learning about why humanity is living behind these walls to begin with, because I'm starting to get a little skeptical about the whole notion of people living in the walls being the last bastion of humanity, especially when we learned about Titans being transformed humans in season 2 and the possibility of being brainwashed being opened up. Like I think there's a lot more going on here than I think there's a lot. I think it's kind of catching on that humanity may not necessarily be as finite as we think it is. Like I think there are more people out there than we know. And speaking of Titan transformations too, I like how we got a setup of what Reiner were planning to do with her, and once they brought him back with them to where to pretty much I guess even further as to wherever they came from. Like with that alone of them being a hometown, like I'm not sure their hometown was necessarily as close to the walls as we thought it was. I think it is somewhere else beyond the walls too. So there's that too that also opens up the whole idea of there being more of humanity beyond the walls. But one thing I do like about this reveal of what they were planning to do with Eren, which is basically eat him. I like how this does kind of fill in a lot of the gaps with basically with what happened to Ymir, and with Ymir, and I like how one other thing that I really like about this reveal with the whole eating people in order to become Titan shifters is that it really kind of puts into perspective as to how dangerous a threat Eren himself is. Like Eren, if anyone else pretty much got a hold of the power that pretty much Eren has in order to control Titans, then obviously it's definitely something that whoever whoever Ryan Roberts will work for definitely wants in order to gain more power for one reason or another. And again, this just opens up the possibility to bring more people out there for sure. So yeah, and honestly, somehow, even though we haven't heard a lot from him in a while, I get the feeling that at the center of all this, Aaron's father Grisha isn't too far behind. Like I think Grisha's fingerprints are just all are just all are all over this whole situation of him of Aaron's power, and especially of Aaron's power to transform into a Titan, especially of the power to control Titans as well. Like all this is leading back to Grisha for me. But I guess, and I think we're ready for a climax where we are about to learn all this stuff. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter and Facebook. That's Night Signing off. Later, guys.